Anthropic launched two new AI models, the best models the world has seen. And 3 days later, the US government canceled them. Sounds a bit like AI news, but it's actually a business warning.
Yes, because if your business runs on one AI provider, one tool, one model, you may not own the thing that you think you own.
Exactly. You might not have an AI strategy. Instead, you have a single point of failure. Everyone's rushing to build their business on AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, agents, automations, all of it. But what actually happens when the tool you rely on changes, breaks, gets restricted, or completely disappears? I've spent nearly a decade working with AI, building it, breaking it, and seeing what actually works. So I'll be calling BS on the bad advice.
And I'll be keeping it human as we go up in the AI.
I'm James.
I'm Tanya, and welcome to Up in the AI. So, James, what will people get out today's episode?
So by the end, you'll know why the Claude Fable ban matters for your business, where the hidden risks are when you rely on one provider, and how to start building AI workflows that are more resilient, more profitable, and more under your control. We've also got a free AI dependency audit. It'll help you spot where your AI setup is strong, where it's fragile, and what to fix first. All that's linked in the description.
Awesome. Okay. But before we get into the meat of it, we're going to go into our BS or no BS round. And for those of you new here, what that means is I'm going to ask James a series of questions. He has to call BS or no BS, give a little bit of context as to why. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, we're going with question one. A business's AI strategy built around one provider is safe.
This is such a tough one. I'm going to say that it's not BS for now. If you look at what happened with Fable, you can still have a strategy built around Claude because I've just moved my models from Fable down to Opus 4.8. And in fact, I wasn't actually using Fable for everything, more the high level coding and strategic thinking. That said, that whole statement might be wrong if we see that a model doesn't get shut down, but a whole business gets shut down. So it's an interesting one.
Two, if you built on Fable 5 this week, you'd be stuck.
No, that's definitely BS, as I just mentioned. All you need to do is click a button. In fact, because Fable's banned inside of your Claude, it's going to automate back down to Opus 4.8, and you can just continue every single chat exactly as it was before.
Directing your staff to use ChatGPT or Claude is an AI strategy.
Yeah, that's definitely BS. I actually think that it's hard to say what's worse. Do you do no AI or do you just direct them to do their own thing with AI? There's so many dangers in not being control as a business owner on what your staff are doing and your general AI policy. I think it's good to get people started, but you've got to give them some sort of path to work with, some sort of direction, some sort of goal. And you've definitely got to build eventually a true AI strategy, which is a proper doc.
So let's crack on into the meaty part of what we're here to talk about. And we've got quite a bit to cover off, and we're going to go play by play. But I think to get everyone on the same page, the headline that everyone saw that Fable 5 released and then 3 days later was shut down for all. Walk us through. So what actually happened then?
I don't want to go too much into politics because I do feel there's things happening behind the scenes here. I think it's not really to do with the thing that happened, but essentially somebody found a vulnerability, and out of that, Trump used it as a national security threat. And there was an order given to Anthropic to cease delivering this model to any foreign bodies, anyone in a foreign country to the US. Unfortunately, Claude cannot distinguish in real time, at least, the difference between a US user, UK, Australian, or any of the others. So everyone lost it. I would say, to put my spin on it, that since Anthropic decided to, not take that government contract and everything government related push towards ChatGPT. This was a huge step for Anthropic to go and be the leader. And I think all that's happened is Trump's halted that progress. And now Anthropic is got to prove that its model is safe. And this is, funnily enough, after Anthropic has painted themselves as the uh, what's the word I'm looking for? The ethical AI company, by putting out, this test first. They've released, Fable is a guarded mythos without the ability to do everything that a user might want. And so it's now really hard for them to come back and argue that, this is just a small thing, because if that's the persona they've given themselves, now they have to live up to it. So I don't know. We talked about it, right? Like I thought the play from Anthropic to put that PR out was very, very smart. But this is it backfiring in their face, I would say.
Yes. Now, I know this is not an episode purely on Anthropic, as we've done
Yeah.
in the past.
Mm.
There's been some talk of this also potentially being another marketing ploy. This is sort of the typical Anthropic story of how their marketing works. What do you think about that?
There has to be a benefit. I mean, we all got to play with Fable for 3 days. I think most people, the non-AI people, probably didn't even realize it had come about. Maybe they switched to it, didn't realize just how good it was. They burned through a shed load of tokens without knowing how to use it properly. I can only see downsides to killing it in 3 days. That said, it was always going to be killed in like 10 days. So
Mm.
who knows?
Okay. Well, I say we'll leave that there. That's for the conspiracy theorists. Okay. So, what do you think, this was a one off, or do you think that this is something that could happen to any provider?
Yeah, I mean, any US provider, for sure. We've seen other governments get involved, like with Manus, which I don't know a huge amount about this, but obviously Facebook went to buy Manus. That transaction went through, but then the Chinese government, I think, stopped it. That's about as deep as my understanding that goes. So we are seeing governments get involved. Yeah, I see this as the first of many. And unfortunately, like, us lowly Australians that don't have our own big AI company with their own model and so on, like, we're going to be given what we've got. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
very much controlled. I get that
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the beginning you said that some would have read this as AI news, but actually it's a business warning. What's your take on
Yeah, it
that?
is.
What do you think?
It's not just about, whether a model can be taken away. It's about, whether a model like this, a new model gets released and maybe it breaks. And there's so many different things that could go wrong. What businesses need to think about is, how do we ensure that we're not overly dependent on one provider, on one model, on one type of AI? That's why it's like that whole, like, just handing over ChatGPT and Claude to your staff is, it's not a strategy. A real strategy looks at all of these kind of things. What's the worst case scenario? You give everyone a Claude team account and they're all operating in Claude chat, and then Claude gets shut down for that country, right? I mean, let's say that Claude continues going, but that country loses access. So all of that stuff that you've put in there, you can't even log in to pull it out.
Mm. Yeah, okay. All right. So, right, this is not, as you've highlighted, it's not really necessarily an Anthropic story. It's a single provider problem, right? Not just a Claude problem. Okay. So, you've highlighted one or maybe one more. What are the different ways a business can lose access to AI without doing a single thing wrong?
That's a good question. So, first off, it's 100% not just an Anthropic thing. This could happen with ChatGPT, Gemini, and the rest. It could also be that it's not actually the model you lose access to. It could be that you're using some intermediary like an N8N or an open router, something that powers your business that you don't have a redundancy for, and that could go down. There's an example from my business actually recently. I'm not sure whether we talked about this on the podcast, but we were lazy in just one moment and we shared a login link for the master team account, the account that issues licenses,
Uh-huh.
to one of our developers, because
Yeah.
one of the founders, I won't name names, but it wasn't me, just was busy. Like, he was in a meeting. The developer wanted it urgently. He's like, oh, just log in and you sort it out.
Yeah.
Now, what we can gather is that there was some sort of Trojan virus on our developers' um, computer, and somebody intercepted that link, got access to our account, issued a whole set of other licenses, which they took for themselves, added a whole set of extra credits. Luckily, my business partner was up and awake, saw it happening, and stopped it. 5 grand went in 1 hour, and worse, those people had done a lot of things with the Claude accounts that are not allowed. So whilst we started seeking support, all of the automations that are built in, the compliance automations built into Claude, essentially banned us all. So not only did we get charged an extra 5 grand, then we all lost access because of what these hackers did. And then we didn't have Claude. So I luckily work off a personal account. So I kept access, and we did eventually get the team account back. But you can see the over reliance on one provider there. It's
Yeah.
not good.
No, and something as you were talking, it made me think. So since like you talked about, all right, let's say that we leverage Claude and ChatGPT, and we've got these different models that work for us in our own way. But those models also power other AI businesses, right? So, like,
Mm,
I feel like since Claude's obviously been releasing new and more improved models, their other AI businesses are now using those to enhance their services and offerings. And so, if that happens, the ripple effect is quite significant. I just realized
correct.
that, and I thought, wow, actually, there's a bigger thing that goes on here. It's not just a single business; it's multiple businesses, many. What?
So I mean,
Yeah.
I will say, so as you know, one of my gigs is to be product expert on an AI platform. And in this AI platform, there are all of the models. So we use a tool called OpenRouter to connect all of the different tools together. So in that sense, if the whole of Anthropic went down, that nothing would happen with that platform. It would just continue. Those Anthropic models would just get marked as inactive, and as simple as that. Like, it would just kind of annoy the people that prefer to use the Anthropic models within the platform.
Hmm.
So, but that's because we're prepared, right? If you were using just instead of using OpenRouter, if you were using Anthropic's API console and you were just using Claude models, and I know of actually a business that does have an AI platform that does heavily rely on Anthropic, yeah, that would go down, and then the whole system would go down.
Mm. Okay. Well, before we go too into the bigger business issue on what could happen, let's reframe it back down to, a modest sized business, okay? Successfully run. So, what are the workflows do you feel that could be like most, where they could be most exposed and where they might not see it coming?
So on this, I would say that it's actually the simpler flat platforms that are most at risk. So what do I mean? If you look at how people use chat, so let's just again use Claude as an example. So you've got chat, co-work, and code. Chat essentially has everything in the cloud. Your all of your projects with all of the knowledge base, all of the chats are in there, right? So if that goes down, there you can't go in there and reclaim those documents. You can't go in there and see those system instructions. The more advanced users, however, are actually creating things for code and co-work on their own filing system. So although you'll lose the history, in most cases that doesn't actually matter because you've got the Claude.md files that define the overall context, you've got memory files, everything is in your AI operating system. So in essence, it's the less technical people that are most at risk in that scenario. Another one probably would be all of your and make.com, all of these workflows that you've now built and you're happy that they're just running automatically. You're not even going to notice when they go down, right? They're just going to stop working. And if you don't check your emails for errors or you don't log in, it could be a while until they come, well, until you realize and do something about it. Again, you can do things like open router within N8N so that there are redundancies. I would bet my life that even some of the more expert automators are actually just using direct Anthropic models or direct ChatGPT models directly in N8N. And in that case, those workflows will go down. If there's a key business dependency, it could be very bad for them.
Yeah, I think this has been really interesting. And there's a stat that we researched that came up, which I think would really kind of like just emphasize the point here. And also how many are thinking about it. It says 81% of executives are at least a little concerned about depending on specific AI vendors, but nearly a third are very concerned. Separately to that, 94% of organizations say they're worried about vendor lock-in. So I think it just
Mm,
really re-emphasizes the point that you've been making there. And the next
100%.
bit I'm really excited about because I think we really get into the heart of this. But before we get there, I just want to say if you really enjoy listening to our podcasts, because we love making them, like and subscribe, leave a comment, and also check out our school community, which is school.com/make money with AI. You'll find us in there. You can always reach out, DM us, and start talking to us. We'd love to help. Okay, so for the next bit, which I think is the real getting to the heart of this, James, you have a line: own the method, not the model. So
Mhm.
unpack that for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is the crux of what we do at AI Orchestrators, right? This is about codifying your IP. What that means is you've got to kind of segregate what is it that you actually have control of versus what can't you control, what do you have to account for and prepare for. So I think we've made it abundantly clear that you're not in control of cloud-based models. Any kind of organization that has web chat or these, Claude, OpenAI, even Google, they could shut you down at any time. This is like you used to talk about this with social media, right? You never really own your social media following because one violation or pissing off the wrong person, and suddenly you're out and you've lost hundreds of thousands of followers. This is a similar concept. So, what do you own? Well, you own all of your SOPs, all of the templates, all of the history with your clients, all of those meeting records, all of the content that you produce. You own that. Now, if you document it properly, if you collect data as you go, rather than leaving it in the social media platforms that you definitely don't own. If you collect all of this information, house it in a nice spot, it doesn't matter what AI model you use, right? So I've tinkered around with AI like Claude Code for pretty much since it came out. At that time, I was also a big lover of Codex. It just so happens for about a middle 6 months, I didn't use Codex at all. And then ChatGPT 5.5 came back semi recently and I started using it again. It was so easy for me to use it again because I'd already built a system that allows any model to be plugged in. So this is a bit technical. So just hold with me for a second. Like I use these models predominantly in the terminal. I use an IDE, which is a developer environment like VS Code, Cursor, Anti-Gravity. I actually use Z because it's just a bit leaner. And what I do is I say, I want to operate in a folder. And so I choose the folder. Now, the folder is the team, the AI team member or the AI agent that I want to work with. An example of this is my sales team. So I go to the ID and I say, operate in sales team. Inside of there, it has critical files that build the context for any one of the major three systems that I use. So Claude.md for Claude Code, agents.md for Codex, which is ChatGPT, and Gemini.md for Gemini. Because I have those files, they're all the same, but they're just structured in the way for each one of those particular platforms. If the whole of Anthropic was to go down, I would just use Codex. If Codex and Anthropic went down, ChatGPT and Anthropic, I would use Gemini. Now, if all three of them went down, which is highly unlikely, I'd be screwed, but only for a short amount of time because all of those files exist on my computer and it would just be a matter of plugging in another model. And so there's two things that we do in our program, right? The first one, which is essentially the first month, is setting up the foundations for one of these AI operating systems. This is about bringing their IP down from chat into code or co-work. We prefer Claude at the moment, but we know listening to this 6 months on, it might be Codex. And then we teach them how to do the same things they do in chat, but on code with key skills, key agents, and so on. Things like marketing teams, executive assistants. And then the second and third months are all about taking all of their unique stuff, all of their secret sauce, and turning that into agents that no one has, only you have, because it's your expertise and your business. And then by the end of that 3 months, you have a complete AI operating system, usually with dashboards or command centers that live on your computer, not in the cloud on somebody else's infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's my next question. So, for a business who is using different tools, how do they know that their workflows are owned by the business and not by the tool?
If the AI is powering everything, right, it's dictating the memory, you can't see those files. If it's, in its own enclosed app, that if it gets shut out, you wouldn't be able to see it. Like, that is the AI owning it. If it's a tool that reads your files, operates your context, and takes your instructions, then that can be unplugged and something else plugged in.
Mm-hmm. And so, for each of the workflows that a business may have, right? So, an MD file, as an example, Claude.md, is more like the operational like instructions, the route of like how you want it to perform, what you want it to do, kind of the guardrails, right? But it doesn't necessarily itemize out each of the different workflows that a business may use it for. Where do they live, and what would a business do to get them back into them owning it?
Yeah, just like any decent IT and cybersecurity policy, backups are important. So, like, if let's talk about automations for a second, NA10, make.com, every single one of those workflows is a JSON file. And you can download them. And essentially, Claude Code can, or any of these codecs can read them. So, if, for instance, you lost access to NA10, you could give it to Claude Code and ask it to create a make.com version of it, right? So you own, partly the answer to the question is you own it by physically backing it up. They're also like open source. So when we talk about like actual AI, like the redundancy that I'm working on now is, well, if I lost internet, like if I was shut off from the world, which means I would lose all models that operate the cloud, what would I do? Likelihood is there would be a bigger problem.
Yeah, that'd be a
but
horrible feeling. I'd be like, oh, yeah.
I'm working on hardware, not working on, I'm buying hardware. I'm going to get the top of the range MacBook Pro that has 100 gigabytes of unified memory, RAM, and I'm going to have one or two local models. So it doesn't really matter where I am, what I'm doing, like I can operate AI. And that will plug in to the infrastructure that I've already built for Claude Code and Codex. I won't have to do anything significant for that to work. The other and final thing is like running automations. I was a bit of an anti Mac Mini person for a while. I was, as you know, using VPS, and running OpenClaw, then my own harness on there. And I just got rate limited. Like, this was another way in which you're just not in control. And now I completely understand why people bought the Mac Minis. As like my OpenClaw got more advanced, did more things, it took up more CPU usage. And essentially, even though it's supposed to be my server, it's still got shared resources. So if you max out for a specific amount of time, it then completely rate limits you. And I was like, right, okay, I'm buying a Mac Mini. I had enough. Unfortunately, by that time, Mac Minis were in high demand, especially the ones with increased RAM. So 2-month wait list.
Wow.
But I do think hardware is a way to stay in control.
Awesome. And we're going to get to some more ways that you can stay in control, right? But I think what we want to go back to is I mentioned a stat earlier, but there was a little bit more to that stat than what I said at that time. So remember, 94% of organizations are actually concerned about vendor lock in, but nearly half are very concerned. However, the trust in the tool is super high, but the trust in keeping access is not. So let's talk about trust, James, because I think that most people, when they think about trusting AI, is whether it hallucinates or makes things up. But it's a much bigger picture than that, right? So, like for me, I trust the tool that I use because it's never let me down and it works every day and it works without me having to do anything. But is that the trap?
I think this is such an interesting topic because when we talk about dependency, right, well, it's not just provider dependency, it's actually our own dependency on AI to a certain extent. I mean, if we broke it down, what could AI do to lose our trust? So it could give you inaccurate results, aka hallucinate. I think we're all pretty au fait with this, that it happens. So maybe not relevant. Now we've talked heavily about access, reliability. That clearly would cause issues for us. And then we've got other things like the legals, the compliance, the liabilities, accountability. I was actually very disappointed with the support process that Claude had. Like, I'm a lover of Claude. Like, I will back Claude against the other models any day of the week, just because I've used it, loved it. I've got so much value out of it. Huge return on investment. And so it kind of makes it all worse that when you try to talk to it's funny, I'm trying to talk to a human in an AI business, I'm just not getting anywhere. And so we're not getting any understanding as to what, I'm talking about when we got hacked. Like, we're not getting any understanding as to what happened, that we actually got hacked. All of the AI automated systems are just seeing the black and white of it. They're just seeing that somebody under our account did things that were against their terms and conditions. So that has lowered the trust, and these other things that could happen are issues that we all need to be aware of. And I recently had a conversation with a client, and I asked, they were worried about cybersecurity, and I asked them, well, what does you got an IT provider? Yeah, yeah. What does your IT provider say? He says just to stay away from AI systems. And I'm like, that's not a policy. And so, I'm thinking, wow, okay, so now I have to act as the AI consultant and the AI cybersecurity person, because the IT, specialist doesn't want to get involved in the nuances of what's safe and what's not safe with AI. And that's just, to me, absolutely crazy. And so there's all of these third parties that also add to potential trust issues.
Right. And you mentioned something which I thought was really interesting about accountability. Because I think there's a really interesting question here, and it might be hard for some to wrap their head around or agree with. But like, if you're running a business and an AI workflow fails, or a tool is discontinued, or a model or a provider just evaporates, whatever, who is actually accountable in that situation?
Again, I think it's such a gray area. It's like, again, I go back to the example of social media, right? We've seen social media businesses go under. And so what happens to that data? Well, they stop paying their bills, and the data providers behind them shut off their accounts, and you lose access to that data. If the business goes under,
Mm.
it doesn't really matter who's legally liable, right? Because that business has gone under. So I would say, regardless of legalities, regardless of what's said in the contract, you have to prepare so that if the worst case scenario happens, you are safe. You've got backups, you've got the files, you've got your data. I think in the end, businesses always come down to data, right? Can you predict what your clients are going to want, going to need? Can you be there for them before they even know that they need you, right? Can you predict what your market's going to do? Can you see how your content's performing? All of this is incredibly valuable data. Most businesses let this live in their cloud-based systems. And so if and when they get turned off, it's gone forever. The
Right.
smartest businesses bring all of their data into data warehouses. So I think if you do one thing out of this podcast, just one thing, actually don't worry about AI. AI we're gonna see so many changes over the next 3 to 6 months, 1, 2 plus years. I would say just get your data into a place where you own it, right? Like one of the best things I did was bring all of my Fathom recordings. I had 1,500 of them in there and brought them all down into a database and I mapped them, right? I used AI to map them. That was the real leverage. But now, if Fathom shuts down, I retain all of my data, all of my conversations, all of the advice I've given, all of the stories. That remains mine. I bet my life that 95% of people, maybe 99% of people that use Fathom, Fireflies, Granola, all of these different note taking tools, I bet they just rely that those tools are going to keep running tomorrow. And so if they got shut down, all of that IP would just be gone.
Right. Agreed. So I think maybe I was leading, but to my point is the true accountability lies with the business. The
Yes.
business, like, because they did not prepare. They did not, like you say, take the time to mitigate the risks, spot them, find ways in which they could then plan and prepare
Yeah.
so that they wouldn't
Yeah.
become risks. Really interesting. And it's something that might, for me myself, it's making me take stock and thinking, okay, I want to be, prepared. So I think it's a good thing to think about. So moving then into like, what are the questions and you think a business owner should be asking before, well, relying on a tool? Or is it just covering our ground? We just need to go to, don't fully rely on the tool. Make sure that you have a backup.
I think it becomes not old ground for this episode, but old ground for many other episodes. It's, do you have a proper strategy? Are you solving real problems?
Right.
Are you, working out where the biggest leverage points are in your business? When you start there, usually data becomes a key part of that conversation. And then, just after the data part, when you start employing the AI, it's like, okay, where's this AI operating? A long time ago, we decided to self-host NA10. For us, we liked it better. It was safer, than having it on NA10's cloud hosting, and cheaper on NA10's cloud hosting. So we consistently look at our software solutions just as much as our AI solutions and go, right, is this the best platform for what we want to achieve? And I think that's what every business has to do. It is called an AI strategy for a reason, and you need to document it.
Yes, this is perfect, right? So let's put the fear-based conversation aside and let's move into, okay, what does an anti-fragile AI business actually look like? You've already mentioned some really key things there. So AI strategy, right? Backing up all of your workflows and your instructional documents. So what are the other things that constitute an anti-fragile AI or just an anti-fragile business in general?
Yeah, now I just think we're summing up. This is a great place to kind of wrap things up. It's about documenting your processes. You have SOPs. So let's say in the worst case scenario, all you have is SOPs and you've put them all into Claude and you've lost them all. Well, any model can take those SOPs and then rebuild what you've got. So as long as you've documented your processes, your workflows, you've ticked off box number one. Box number two, I won't go into it, data. I think backing up any systems that you can, we talked about that, that's going to be super important. Anywhere that you can use external hardware, like I mentioned, Mac Minis, things that you actually own in your office. I think also, here's an interesting one, anti-fragile business, especially AI related, leaning too much on AI, replacing all of your humans just to have AI fail you. That's a stupid move. Yeah, okay. Cut the dead weight. That's what a business should do anyway. Now people are using AI as an excuse to do that at scale. To an extent, that's a smart move. But don't get rid of all of the people that are your experts. Use AI to make those experts thrive. Get them to do triple, quadruple the amount of work they were before. Get them to do the things that make them happy, that move the needle for your business. That way, if shit hits the fan with AI, you've still got your experts in-house ready to help.
Okay, so I think we can both agree that humans are still a very important part of the process. So what is the role for the human then? What do you think is the future role for the human in the business?
It doesn't matter whether we're talking about the business owner or a key individual within the business. There's a reason why we picked the name Orchestrator. We're not the first to use it, but it's such a pivotal notion. It's not just about building AI agents that orchestrate other agents. It's about empowering humans to orchestrate AI. I think you stop seeing individuals as, oh, we've got a marketing person, we've got a finance person, blah blah blah. You start seeing individuals as orchestrators that can orchestrate a whole workflow, that can anticipate the business needs and translate that into AI solutions. And it's so linked to everything that we're talking about, because the best orchestrators also build systems that are long lasting, are scalable, that are transferable. So if I'm a business owner and I know nothing about AI other than, I want to use it to scale, my very first thing that I would do is actually find somebody, a specialist, to start orchestrating AI within the business. That could be a consultant, that could be a program like ours, or it could be hiring an AI specialist that also has intense experience within your specific industry.
Right. So this is a real role that someone can step into, not just a buzzword.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether people are calling them orchestrators yet, but we're seeing lots of industries have roles drop off. Like, usually when it comes to tech, software development is the first to innovate and the first to change. So let's see what used to be to build an app. You would have a BA. A BA would go collect information off the client or the people within the business and essentially scope up what's needed. You pass that to a solutions architect that manages a team of developers. They would scope up from a technical standpoint what that actually means. It goes back to the BA stroke, the project manager takes it to a designer that creates something beautiful, then goes back to the software development team, and then after that you've got QA, testers, and so on. Now, that's a pretty heavy team, right? And on top of that, you have my role, what I historically did, which is product, right? So I sit as the glue in between all of these things, making sure that whatever's being built is going to resonate with the marketing team and the ICP. It's going to achieve the business goals from the executives. Like, it's a whole thing. Now, what we're seeing is that these roles are all being conjoined into one role, which is like builder, right? So you actually doing all of those things. Like, you don't need a graphic designer anymore, that's for sure. You can essentially use Claude Design to scope up whole user interfaces that are completely interactive. I still think that a product person might be biased, but product person is really necessary, because the product person would be the orchestrator for all of the user experience, all of the marketing, probably do a lot of the BA work, and potentially even with the help of AI, the project management as well. And then on the other side, I think a solutions architect and maybe one developer, maybe the solutions architect by themselves, can do everything else, because the solutions architect becomes the orchestrator of the development. And so this is what you're seeing in the software development. Like, that all of those roles have come down into a couple of builder roles. And I think that's what we're going to see across all of the different industries. And these roles coming together, they will have this orchestration element to them.
They hear it. Orchestration is the future. And for businesses,
Yeah.
this is the thing that you want to be thinking about bringing into your business. Someone, yourself, getting yourself to that position, or someone else. I think that's a really good, clear step. Okay, so now we're on to our quick fire questions. Short answers only. Are you ready, James?
I am. Can't guarantee short answers only, but I'll try.
You got to give it your best. That's all right. I'm sure you'll do great. All right, Fable getting pulled was one model for 3 days. What happens to your business if your whole provider goes the same way?
If you are completely reliant on that provider, you're screwed. But if you've prepared yourself to be scalable and interchangeable with providers, you're absolutely.
Great. I thought you were going to leave it after screwed, and I was like, yeah, you see, you nailed it. Perfect short answer. Right. Question 2. What's the biggest red flag that a business is too dependent on one AI provider?
They don't own their data. They don't have filing systems, context. They don't have anything physical to show for
And they only use one AI provider, right?
it. Yeah, true.
Okay. 3. What's the one thing every owner should export or write down today?
I would say if they're already using AI, the key workflows that touch the public, either their marketing prospects or their customers, they need to know where the biggest risks are.
Great. 4. What's one AI workflow that always should have a human review in the loop?
Anything that revolves around finances, money exchanging hands.
What's better, the best model or the best, most resilient system?
If we're talking about the systems that we build, that our listeners can build, it's a resilient system. Yeah, for sure. If we're talking about like AI systems themselves, it doesn't really matter because if you've built your own scalable system, it's all interchangeable.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Today we talked about the Claude Fable ban, but I think we've uncovered that there's something bigger. What happens when your business depends on one AI provider?
Yeah, bottom line, if your AI workflow dies when one model disappears, you haven't built a system, you've built a dependency.
Correct. So if you want to find out where if your setup is fragile, grab our free AI dependency audit. Links in the description.
Yeah, and the future isn't chasing every new model, it's knowing how to orchestrate the right tools, workflows, people, and processes. Own the method, not the model.
And remember, you're warmly invited to join our school community, which is Make Money with AI. Don't just listen to this podcast. I implore you to go take action because that is how you're going to stay ahead of the AI curve.
Exactly, Tanya. And the link for that's in the description below. So we will see you next time.
We will see you up in the AI.